once said, I think rather memorably, that the problem is never the faith, it's the faithful. Because the faithful take the faith and they use it, as a cudgel to hit others with.
Yeah.
And this is something which clearly those who have benefited from your instruction are able to do. I know you've taken your course to the jails of India, Tihar jail and so on.
We have done it in jails all over the world.
All over the world.
In Kosovo, in fact, we have done for the war victims and prisoners, also the military people. In Croatia, after the war, there was trauma in their mind. And
terrible trauma.
About 3 days of program with them, they got back again on their feet. They're smiling again. They said, the research that has come out of their experience is something very beautiful, very touching. So war veterans also find it very, very useful. Because see, life is like a river. So every moment there is new water in it.
That's
and the
right.
mind
you
is
never
like
really step into the same river twice because the river has changed.
Change.
Well, intriguingly enough, this has happened in Western Europe. When you think about the centuries of warfare between Germany and France, for example, Belgium was even called the cockpit of Europe because the number of countries that fought over that soil. Today it's almost inconceivable to imagine any sort of fighting or violence amongst the countries of Western Europe.
Correct.
And in a relatively short time this has happened. But I wonder, some might argue it has happened without the benefit of religion. It has happened, they would say, through economic development and perhaps through secularization.
Time heals. Time is the best healer. And it takes a lot of time. At least even a decade is a long time. A generation gap is a big time. So even today, if you see the older generation of people who were the victims of World War, they are not so friendly. Who is really friendly? The younger generation who has not seen the war. This prejudice and barriers that we create in our mind causes either through indoctrination by political system, economic system, religious system, or through their own experiences of some trauma that need to be in some way attended to.
I have to say that I share a slightly lurking fear that all humanity is capable of the worst sort of atrocity and behavior. Germany was one of the great countries of Western civilization, a place of music and art and dance and theatre, high learning, philosophy, great philosophers. And what did they do? They succumbed to Nazism and ended up committing warfare and the Holocaust. So the question that comes up is there something latent in all of us that is frankly evil? And can that evil be brought out by unscrupulous or unprincipled leaders? Because you've said there's something positive at the center of all of us. I'm asking, is it also possible there is something evil at the center of all of us?
Negative emotions are part of life. Anger. A child gets angry. A child is born, it gets angry. But the anger of a child does not stay. So our Indian philosophy in our scriptures say the healthy emotion is that which stays only as long as you draw a line on the surface of water. You can get angry, but you have to come back to your senses. But unfortunately, people are stuck in their anger for long periods of time. And what they do when they are angry, they are not aware. And all disasters are caused when they are not aware. Because when a person is aware and there is humanness in them that's awakened or rekindled, he cannot do anything that would hurt others.
But even within our own society, we've seen such terrible acts of violence between people who have otherwise been living together for centuries. And this is again something that I wonder what we can do to overcome situations in which, as we've seen, terrible riots, terrible killings, sort of the pogroms in Gujarat a couple of years ago, things like that. Somehow these very values and principles you've mentioned, which are inbred in our civilization and our culture, somehow they get suspended for this period.
We are forgetting those values, We have forgotten all that, the whole thing about Mahatma Gandhi's non-violent movement where you would insist on the justice, but in a non-violent manner.
Sometimes one wonders whether some of our leaders are conscious that the business of politics ought to be about something more than politics. It ought to be about the welfare of people. Politics is a means to an end, not an end in itself.
Absolutely.
And yet so many, sadly, have chosen to define politics down into issues of identity, into issues of power for certain groups. And that, sadly, is what we in this society need to overcome still. When religion gets divorced from spirituality and becomes something that is a label, something that you do, as you said, in terms of external practices, and then it gets associated with the need to belong, then I'm afraid you have exactly the kinds of dangers that we have seen in our society. If people could define themselves as citizens or as members of a society, rather than principally by a religious label that sets them apart from others, how much more peace we would have in our world.
This has to happen throughout. It can't happen in a, like India can say we don't want nuclear weapons, but you cannot unless the whole world renounces it. And perhaps this is one of the reasons, being such a huge population, thousands of years we have been ruled by external countries. Though we never went on an aggressive assault on any country, they have been peace-loving. What happened in Tibet, they were totally in peace. But their peace was without strength.
Well, non-violence, of course, one of the great strengths of Gandhiji's non-violence was that he was applying it against a civilization that was capable of being shamed by its own brutality. I mean, certainly the British Empire, which certainly, I'm very glad we got out of our country, at least they were able to see that when Gandhiji was inflicting suffering upon himself, it shamed them as the ones
more
who were
sensitive they were.
But could it have worked against Nazi Germany?
This is a good hypothesis. We have to think about it. As I said, intrinsically every human being is positive, is good-hearted. He has a heart. He loves. However rude and rough someone may be, but he loves his family. He loves the people around him. He loves himself. So love is present in every human being. It just needs a little kindling. Even Ravana, after his death, he merged into Rama.
Quite right. And then, so the notion is that we all have Rama and Ravana within us.
Ravana is only an outer figure. Inside Ravana, there is intrinsically Rama. We say evil is only relative. Evil is only a lack of goodness, rather than an existence by itself.
I accept the proposition that all people are not evil, but people are capable of performing evil acts.
Evil acts.
And somehow one has to respond to those evil acts. Your spiritual idealism I respect greatly. But can you, for example, find yourself in a situation where the most horrendous atrocities have been committed and not demand justice on behalf of the victims?
No, we must. We must demand justice. Justice should be demanded without anger.
Well, at the international level, we're trying very much to promote this principle of no impunity. So the International Criminal Court, for example, is trying precisely to investigate crimes against humanity committed by leaders who have the power to do so. But they should not go unpunished. Now, there's controversies about this. Some people say that the threat of prosecution will mean that these evil people will never stop their evil deeds, because they will feel the moment they stop, they risk being punished. And this again becomes part of a very complicated